Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So today, turn my volume all the way up so you can hear me. Today we're going to talk about abduction. What's that look like? There's lots of people that perhaps don't even think that they have been abducted themselves. So I want to kind of go over some of the signs and symptoms, if you will. Um, and these are a list of signs and symptoms that were made by MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network. Um, their conclusions, their scientific findings from speaking to multiple experiencers and abductees, as well as empaths, intuitives, and other people who just, don't have any kind of abduction or experiencer type events, but they do have other things in common. So, well, we're going to kind of cover all of that. Um, I feel like this is something important to do because, as I was getting ready to say, a lot of people don't even realize that they've been abducted. Um, Maybe they've never really been brave enough to look into it very far, but they had some inkling that something wasn't right. Um, and that's fine. We no judgment on anybody, right? Because we all go at our own pace and we all are only going to absorb what we're ready to really digest and absorb, right? So, I'm going to begin with 58 signs of plausible abduction. And then we're going to go over the official questionnaire that MUFON does. And in between, I'm going to, sort of fill you in on my experiences, my knowledge about the whole thing. Um, I've been in the UFO field for 32 years, something like that, since I was around it was mid 20s when I really got involved. And I actually became a MUFON investigator, field investigator myself. Took the course, did the training, the whole deal, because I was so interested in understanding what the hell this phenomena is all about. Even though I've always known my whole life that I interacted with different beings from other places, I didn't understand why or where they came from necessarily or whatever, because, even if you come here with the memory of why, society and the people that teach you and mold you tell you otherwise, and then you start questioning what you think you knew, right? And so in my early 20s, I really had to seek that out and understand that deeper. And that's why I became a field investigator to begin with. So let's go over the 58 possible signs. And you never know, with me, I might actually add a few more to this. Um, so, number one, probably the most common sign would be lost time. Anywhere from minutes to a couple of days. Some people, in rare cases, even a few weeks, that they may be missing. Um, so lost time. That would be time you can't explain where it went, right? Let's say you wake up at 1:11 a.m. and you get out of bed and you go to the bathroom to go pee. And next thing you know, you're standing in your bathroom or you're standing in your kitchen and it's 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. And you're like, what the heck? What am I doing here? I know I got up to pee at 1:11. So why am I still out here? What's going on? And you can't recall anything that happened. For me, I had a few different missing time events. The first one, a lot of you know about. It's when I was right around 7 years old, and I went to the park to play and saw the beautiful girl Alanis in the park and thought that I was there maybe 15 minutes speaking with her when the albino man that was dressed in the traditional Men in Black type three-piece suit and hat, and his two little short counterparts came walking over to us, and I rushed away, saying that I heard my mother yelling for me and ran home. And then come to find out, when I got back across the street from the park to my house, the whole neighborhood had formed a search party looking for me. I'd been missing for like 3 hours. And I was like, no, that's not possible. I was only there about 15 minutes. And so that was my first uh, missing time that I really vividly recall. There were other times when, I would get sent to the store, walk to the store for my mom to get a simple list of things or whatever, and not come back for hours. And my parents always thought that I was just really dingy and would get lost and didn't know how to find my way home and would end up way across town. But honest to God, I had no idea how I ended up on the other side of town. I didn't walk there. No one drove me there. Like I didn't know how I got there. And so I got to where as a child, I was very nervous about that, very frightened about that. How am I doing this? Why can I not remember how I got here or there or whatever? And it was so bad for me at times that when, and my brother was, I had six other siblings, but five of them were already grown. So it was just me and my brother. And I know I'm kind of off track here, but my brother was the one that would always instigate things or do sneaky things behind the parents' back, and blame them on me. And I didn't really do a whole lot. I really liked just following the rules, so I didn't do a whole lot that was bad. But I got to the point with this anxiety about the missing time that when my parents would say, "Kelly, did you do this?" Like I would really stand there and try to think, did I? And I just don't remember because of this missing time thing. But other than that, I have an immaculate memory. I have a photographic memory. I can go to the movies and watch a movie and then recall everything down to the color of their socks. I mean, I have a very good memory, like an elephant, normally, except for where this missing time stuff was happening. So it really made me start questioning myself. So, anyway, that's uh, part of what prompted me to get so far into this to really understand what's happening with all of this. For me, it started with the missing time, for sure. So, number two is unusual marks, any kind of scoop marks, unexplainable scars, laser cut appearing scars, generally on your wrists, your ankle, or your back. Also, scars that are in like a triangled pattern where there's three scars, but they're like in a triangle shape. Um, these are telltale signs that you have been abducted and that they've done their scientific medical experiments on you. I personally have a teardrop scoop mark scar on the inside of my ankle that I've never ever been able to explain how it got there. And I mean, like literally from the first time I noticed it, it was just a perfectly healed up, fresh scar. Um, and also with me having Indian in my family, all of my scars tend to be red for a very long time. So it was very fresh and noticeable because it was red. So, I do know that it's something that happened and I wasn't aware of it. It was this big. I mean, I should have been aware of a chunk of me getting scooped out, right? Number three, tapping or humming noises or booms, uh, either heard upon odd occasions or near bedtime. Now, I want to go into depth with this a little bit too with my experience because it's if you have somebody to try to help you understand this better, then maybe you can say, aha, okay, so maybe I was abducted. Maybe something was going on with me, but other than just reading it off and it being a blank template. So for me, a lot of times, and my brother that was close to my age, a lot of times we would share a full size bed together, um, particularly when we would go to visit our father. So we would be laying in this bed, and all of a sudden, this bed would just start vibrating, just like the whole freaking bed, like remember those old beds at the hotels that you put the quarter in and they shake, and it's like a really rough shake? It was like that. Strange vibration would go all across the bed. And my brother would start yelling at me, stop shaking the bed. And I would yell at him, I'm not shaking the bed, you are, stop. And, next thing you know, our father's yelling down the hallway at us that we better quit fighting and stuff, or we're going to get whipped. So we would zip up about it. But right after all of that vibrating would begin, I could hear my blood pressure raise in my ears. Like in my ears, to me, I likened it to the sound of a little army of men marching. Right? It was this really prominent sound in both ears. And my ear pressure would close in the way that, like, when you go down through valleys, how your ear pressure will stop up your ears. I would have this enormous ear pressure thing happen. And of course, me and my brother would both, be zipped, not speaking or moving anymore, because this is still happening. And it's not either, we know that it's not the other one doing it at this point. And we're fearful of that. We're fearful of our dad coming down the hallway and whipping us. So we just zip it up and we don't say anything about it. And next thing you know, I would hear this boom in my head, like a shotgun had went off next to me. And I would like black out. So I wouldn't recall um, what happened after that unless it started playing out in my dreams. And my brother and I, interestingly, would never even speak to each other about these events. And we were both being taken at the same time. We didn't speak of it until much later in life, when I was in my late 20s and he was in his 30s, early 30s. Um, once I really got into being an investigator for MUFON, is when I started asking him questions and talking to him about this. And then we did so much more, and I'm going to get to teaching you about that too. Um, awesome stuff. So number 3 is the tapping or the humming noise or booms. The booms sound like they're coming from inside your head most of the time, but you could also hear a boom, like a sonic boom, as well. Um, Tapping noises would be like, tapping like that, but also it could sound like Morse code. Sometimes the tapping that would happen that I would experience before being taken sounded very similar to Morse code. And interestingly enough, my father, who was a merchant marine and Coast Guard, um, taught my brother and I Morse code from a very, very young age. So that's interesting to me now in hindsight, because the beings that take you have different ways of communicating with you, um, like with telepathy, but also with things that you're knowledgeable on. So if you know how to do telepathy, they speak with you that way, or they teach it to you very quickly. If you're psychic and you've got other gifts, they will use those gifts and utilize them and speak to you through your different various gifts. I personally knew Morse code. I think they were speaking to me through Morse code to give me a less frightening way to experience the abduction, um, or I look at it now for experiencing the medical exams that were necessary for me to go through, you see. So, um, and they knew that it was quite frightening for me. I mean, my blood pressure would raise, my ears would pop, all kinds of things was going on when they'd shake the bed. And when the bed shaking stuff stopped, then the Morse code type things started happening around my teenage years, teens and early 20s. Okay, so moving on, number 4 is the feeling of being watched. People who obsessively need to keep their curtains closed as soon as the sun goes down, or will have this strong inner desire to go and check your windows and your doors and make sure that they're locked. Or if you're out in public, you feel like, cars are following you, or specific people are watching you when you're out in public somewhere. Um, it's not paranoia. and it's not schizophrenia. I mean, though those are symptoms of that. For abductees, for experiencers, it's more of an alertness. It's you're on high alert and you're very aware of the energies around you, even if you don't like consciously know that you're aware of it. Your subconscious is, because on the subconscious level, every single human being on this planet is reading and transmitting energy 24/7. We are always transferring and receiving these signals. You just aren't aware of it, except on the subconscious level, right? Which is your animalistic level. Okay. So you may feel that people are watching you, but the bulk of it will be after the sun goes down, right? Um, right before bedtime, or when you feel like you're alone in the house, even if everybody else if there's lots of other people that live in your house with you, but everybody else is asleep and you're not, um, then you would start feeling that sense of somebody's watching me. Okay, so that's a very telltale sign of being an experiencer or an abductee. Um, Number 5 is sleepwalking, and this can happen at any age of your life. Okay, for me personally, I didn't sleepwalk, but I have 7 children of my own. Uh, each I have suspected at different times in their life were being abducted when a series of things took place for them. And 1 out of 7 children in particular would sleepwalk very often. And sometimes she would end up outside the house in the yard and wake up and not know, why she's there in the yard. Um, so she's had a lot of experiences throughout her life, which, um, we all take our own time to cope with and come to terms with. And growing up with me as your mother can have its pros and its cons. So at some points in her life, it was okay and she understood it, and then at other points in her life, it was something that she feared and really wished just wasn't part of our life, understandably, you know. So sleepwalking is definitely a telltale sign. Number 6 is seeing a UFO, again, at any age, up close or at a distance. The thing about seeing the UFOs is that you don't see them unless they intend for you to. And you can think, oh well, if they're X amount of thousands of feet up in the air, X amount of people down here on the ground are going to see them. But that's actually not true. There's maybe between 1 and 3 people that are going to see them, and that was intentional. So keep that in mind. If you've seen a UFO, if you've seen something that you clearly were like, that's not a satellite, that's not a planet, that's not a comet, that's not a meteor, you know, whatever, it's not the moon, it's not an airplane, it's not a helicopter, it's not a drone, it's not flares, then, and you're like pretty sure, even if you don't believe in aliens and all that stuff, you're pretty sure it wasn't none of those things. You just don't know what it was. So if you've had that experience, it's a very, very highly likely, um, probable conclusion to say you've been abducted at that time, whether you realize it or not. And I know that there's some people that would say, no, if something like that happened, you would know. There's no missing time. There's no this. There's no that. Blah, blah, blah. But thing is, um, you can be abducted, and when they bring you back, you're like mind swiped to where you don't recall anything that happened. Some people, they don't even have to mind swipe them because your own brain did it for them. The fear that set in from the unknowing of this experience excuse me, creates this blockage in our memory banks automatically for us to protect us. It's a built-in protection device that we have within our own brain computer, workings. The ability to block out certain memories. I mean, that's a given, right? A lot of people with childhood trauma have blocked it out so well that so powerfully that as adults they don't understand why they behave the way they do and end up in the relationships that they end up in because they're not thinking they have any childhood trauma because it was blocked out so strongly, you know. Um, and I can't help with that if you need that kind of help. So moving on, number 7 is the need to travel. This compulsive need to go, whether it's to walk or to drive. And you don't have a reason for it. You just know, like, I need to go outside right now, or I need to get in the car and drive somewhere right now. And you have no explanation for it. And you're just like, I'm going to do it like I'm a robot, right? You just go and you do it. You make a beeline for it. Chances are you're actually being pulled energetically through some type of thought control or transmission to say, hey, come meet us out here at such and such a place, whether it's in the yard or down the road, and they're going to pick you up, you know. And on some level, subconsciously, we understand that and we agree to it. It's not that they're doing it against our free will. I know a lot of people would like to give them that kind of credit and that kind of power, but it's absolutely not true. And I've tested this, so I can say that with 100% surety that they do not have that kind of power over us. We are more powerful than they are. You just don't know it yet. Okay, so the next one would be number 8 on the list, unexplained medical problems. Sudden illness, sudden fatigue, sinus issues that are reoccurring, or migraines that are reoccurring. All of these ailments are telltale signs of abduction. And I could go into more of this in great length, actually. But I'm just going to briefly touch on a few people that I know of as examples. I have a very good friend who one day she can be perfectly fine, completely healthy, go to bed 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, like she and I both do. We're night owls. And not wake up the next day until 2 or 3, 4 o'clock p.m. and be so freaking exhausted. And her body will hurt all over. And she has no clue why. Like, she has no clue. She's like, I didn't do anything to make myself hurt this bad. I slept 13 hours, whatever, some insane amount of time she thought she slept or whatever. And the truth be told, when we look into it further, we realized she was being abducted, right? So, that sudden onset of fatigue out of nowhere, your muscles hurting all over, and you don't know why. Migraines out of nowhere. That's usually because of the medical tests that they're doing on you, and you're aware of it when it's happening. And so just like going to the dentist or the doctor for anything else, if you're nervous, you're tensing up, right? And when you tense up like that, your shit hurts all over. I mean, you're just going to hurt. Like, I went to the dentist last week and had 2 teeth cut out. And one of them hurt like hell to get out of me. It wasn't going to let go. My body hurt for 4 days from tensing up so strong over that dentist. So, and I love my dentist. I'm not putting him down. I'm just saying, like, your body hurts when you tense up really tight over things. And particularly when you're having a needle put in your eyeball where they're, checking some stuff or putting an implant in there, probing up one side of your nasal cavity. And, you're going to have migraines from that kind of stuff. Not to mention the sinus, the constant sinus issues. It doesn't matter if it's allergy season. It doesn't matter if you have a cold. It doesn't matter how perfect the environment could be. you're going to have your sinus issues. Yeah, that one's not one of my favorites at all. Number 9 is the inability to sleep. Now, yes, we could be talking about insomniacs, okay? But it doesn't have to be that extreme. It really doesn't need to be like, oh, I have insomnia. If I lay down, I just can't fall asleep. Though it could be, that could be one of the definitions for insomnia, most certainly. But it's not the only one because more often than your traditional textbook way of thinking about insomnia, it's more like this need to stay awake and up and on guard and watching those doors and watching those windows and looking out if you hear your dog bark and, being on alert. It's like you become the nighttime security guard of the house. That's what it is. It's not like you're just tossing and turning in your bed and you can't fall asleep. It's not regular insomnia. It's more of I feel like there's this mission for me to protect my home from something, even though I don't know what the something is, right? So, insomnia. Also, nightmares, particularly nightmares of UFOs or animals that have big, dark, or big, round eyes. Owls, coyotes, deer that are like cartoon character deers with the big eyes, wolves, even. So, rabbits have been reported as one of them. Trees that could talk in your nightmares being another. But particularly the children are the ones that are going to see the animals, the cartoonish type animals. For me, it was a snowy white owl. I have this infinite love for snowy white owls. But as a child, I did not remember consciously that my affinity for the snowy white owl was actually because of the screen memories that I was being given when I was taken. But the white owl was my friend. The white owl was my companion who was, you know, uh, like a child's version of an imaginary friend or an adult's version of a spirit guide, right? Non judgmental, completely loving, completely protective, completely understanding and compassionate. So, um, yeah, my infinity for the owl came from the abductions that I was experiencing in childhood. And I had one of my own children would say that she would describe them as cartoon type deer, and a tree and two deer would come and take her to play at night in her dreams. So, nightmares, if you will, of UFOs or, you know, vivid memories of these dreams of the cartoon animals. And even, it could be scary to some of them, most certainly. So, number 10 would be implants. Any kind of small, strange object that is within the body, typically in the hands, the nose, the feet, the ankles, the hip, or behind the ear. Though it's not limited to these areas, those are generally the main places that they will go. But I've also had an implant in uh, my arm right here. I actually have a scar that's just like those, what was it, the tuberculosis vaccine that they used to give to everyone up till 72, which is the year I was born. And so I didn't get one of those, but I have a scar that looks very similar to that um, inoculation because when I first noticed the implant there, I started um, mentally rejecting it to push it out of me. And so now I have a hole there and a scar that won't heal up where I dug out this little crystal implant that was in my arm. And now I have one. They've put one over here on this side. And when I push on it, you can feel it move around just like this one did. So I guess I'll just leave this one alone and not try to dig at it and just let it be, right? When I was younger, I have a very vivid abduction memory that I would recall through my nightmares and then get up in the middle of the night and obsessively draw the images that I was seeing in my nightmares of being on a bed, 16. They're doing the implant up my nose through the nasal probe thing. Um, they put another one behind one of my eyes, and I'm assuming that's when I got the bigger scoop mark that I now have as well. But I didn't like those invasive procedures on my face um, to the point that I didn't understand our full power yet, but I understood enough of it to know that I could blow them away from me with my mind's anger, and was really like telepathically letting them know what's what and who's who in this room. And this shit stops now because I don't want this anymore. You stay out of my nose, you stay out of my eyeballs. I don't like that kind of business. So, and then that's when that stopped. Um, I never had another procedure like that again. And I had more very vivid recall of being abducted. But from there, it was much less evasive. They knew they had no choice but to change the way that they were approaching me because I was potentially dangerous to a lot of things, you know, their equipment, them, whatever. And I didn't yet understand my full power. So that makes you even more dangerous if you don't understand it, right? Because you can be reckless. So, okay, enough said about that. Implants is number 10. Number 11 is unexpected terminated pregnancies. Now, you've heard about people who, claim they've had the, excuse me, the hybrid children and been aboard the ships and introduced to the hybrid children that they helped to create, so on and so forth. And a lot of people, unfortunately, do not take that very seriously for a variety of reasons, I would assume. But the majority of them probably just that it's a very uncomfortable subject to talk about, right? Because if such a thing is happening and we can't stop it, then that's not good, right? That's not good. Um, and I personally do not agree with this secretive hybridization program either, um, even though I've participated in it. And that's still one of those gray areas for me that I'm not real clear just which side of the fence I want to be on for that topic. So I get it that people don't feel comfortable talking about it. But it's a very real thing that this is happening to women all over our planet and has been for a very, 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 very long time. With me in particular, with my experience, which is, by the way, all medically documented, every bit of it is medically documented. Uh, I was pregnant with triplets and was told that I wouldn't be able to get pregnant as quickly as I did, number one, because I was on the birth control shot called Depo-Provera. And you get that every 3 months. And it totally cancels out your menstrual cycle altogether. Any type of ovulation or anything cancels it out. And I was on that shot for 6 years. I decided to not get the shot at the end of the 3 months because my husband and I at the time were going to try to get pregnant. I was very adamantly informed that this is going to be at least a year away before anything's going to happen. And within 3 weeks, I was pregnant with triplets. 3 weeks. Within 3 weeks of not getting my shot, I was pregnant. All should be medically impossible. Okay? So that's where the doctor's notes began. Because how in the world did I get pregnant in 3 weeks. And how in the world was the pregnancy already so viable and strong in producing the hormones that I needed that it showed up on a pee stick for the home pregnancy tests? They were mind blown. So that's where it all began. And I carried these triplets for 6 months with all kinds of three specialists, but all kinds of fancy equipment being used on me to inform me, again, adamantly, that none of these three babies were even in my uterus. They were in my abdomen, but not in my uterus, where they should be. They had a sac, they had a umbilical cord, they all looked vital, they were all growing, but I was continually encouraged to have an abortion, which I vehemently refused to do. And at 6 months, I kneeled on the floor, prayed to God, if I can only have one, just give me one, but put it where it belongs. I didn't want to have to face my doctor's appointment the next morning where all three specialists were going to be sitting down with me together and all three of them trying to bully me into an abortion. I saw this ball of light coming through the trees as I prayed and looked up at the sky, the night sky, out the window. I was mesmerized by the light coming at me. I somehow passed out and went to sleep. Woke up the next morning in the same place where I knelt down in the living room to pray. And it was time for my doctor's appointment. So I didn't have time to put a lot of thought into why I slept in the living room on a tiny love seat, 6 months pregnant with triplets. But nevertheless, I did. And I hurried and got to the office, the doctor's office, and blah, blah, blah. Long story short, only one baby was there, two were gone. And the baby is now in the uterus where it belongs, as if it were always there. They were, again, mind blown, medically impossible, so more notes were taken. I was watched and monitored very closely for the remainder of my 3 months of pregnancy and gave birth to a very incredibly healthy baby girl who, at the age of 3, informed me that her twins, that she never knew about, came to visit her in the middle of the night and wanted her to go with them to play. And she told them no, that probably wouldn't be good. Mommy would wake up and miss her and may be mad. So they agreed to stay there and play with her on her turf. But she very cheerfully informed me the next morning, very proud of herself for getting her way and them staying there with her to play, that she had played with her twins. And I mean, she never even really questioned how come they looked just like her. She just immediately understood these are my twins, right? Which was really interesting and strange. So it does happen. And though I personally have no knowledge of ever meeting these other two children, I feel very confident within my own experiences of this pregnancy and those other two babies that they were most definitely taken from my body that night without any sign or physical symptom to safety, because they knew that these children were at risk of being murdered, in my opinion, right? That's just how I feel about abortion. That's my opinion. That's what we've got. But anyway, it's not about that. Just I think that they heard my prayers, and I feel like God had to have had a hand in it, or it wouldn't have been allowed to go down the way it did. If nothing else, they had God's blessing, is the way I'm going to put that. And so I am at peace with that. But women often will find their pregnancy is spontaneously over with no blood, no discharge, no nothing, no pain, no nothing. So it really does happen. And personally, I think this needs to be something that um, society itself is more compassionate about instead of mocking, because there needs to be a support system, not just for abductees in general, a real support system, a real think tank for solutions and understanding, but also a support system for all of the women that experience this for years of their life. Years of their life, women are treated like second rate citizens or certifiably crazy because they know what has happened to their body and their babies, and nobody is believing them or wants to talk about it for whatever their reason is. They don't want to talk about it. So we need support systems. So if any of you watching this um, have been through this and you want to work with me and create a support system, please leave a comment below and we're going to make that happen. Okay. Moving on. Number 12 is sperm samples. If you believe that you have had intercourse or samples extracted from you, whether in the dream state, what you think is a dream state, or you have vivid recall of these things happening to you, then for sure you have been abducted. Because men, just like women, need that support system for people that don't want to talk about these uncomfortable subjects. You know, a lot of people don't look at it the same for men as they do for women when it comes to sex. They think, oh, well, if it was forced on you, it's okay. It's not like rape or anything, right? It's not looked at as a violation in any way if it's a man. Well, that's not really fair, you know? It's a violation from anyone who isn't consenting to this act happening to them. And often you will hear men report that they remember being in this very sterile room and this machine coming down on them and ejaculating them for their fluids. And so that definitely is like a violation. That is, I mean, that is a violation, definitely, you know, and can be quite traumatic if you're remembering it. Sorry, I have to wiggle around in my chair. My back hurts if I sit still too long. So anyway, moving on. Definitely need a support system for that. And again, put a comment below if you're a man interested in a support system. I have a forum on my website. Just simply put the reply of yes in the comment section. That's all you need to say. Just yes. I'll understand. Okay. So 13 would be psychic abilities. And this would be like a sudden onset of psychic abilities, right? Like you would all of a sudden be able to speak telepathically, or all of a sudden you understand how to read energy and hear people's thoughts, or you can read their energy and understand if they're lying or telling the truth, or you have premonitions about future events to come, or you have dream premonitions about future events that will come. Perhaps you suddenly are able to see the spirit world and speak to dead people, right? Um, or whatever your psychic ability may be. You know, it could be a sudden heightened sense of smell or taste or sounds. Uh, you know, clairaudience is when you have clear hearing. You can hear things before they happen. And like for me, I can tell you when I'm driving down the road, I can tell you where the police are sitting on the road because I hear in my head sirens 5 seconds, 10 seconds before I'll see the police officer sitting on the side of the road, you know. So, psychic abilities come in various forms. Sleep paralysis is another big one. Waking up unable to move either for a few seconds or a few minutes. This scares the hell out of people. They have a medical term for it, sleep paralysis, you know, which, I mean, undoubtedly, some people just have this. But really, I would rather put all of my money on not at least 9 out of 10, if not all 10, are experiencing that because they've been abducted. Okay. And I'm just going to add to this because I don't know if it's in this list for sure or not, but feeling an electrical field around you as well. Because there have been times when I'm brought back from an abduction that as I wake up, I feel this tingling all around me, like static electricity that's around the whole silhouette of my body. And, like immediately I'm getting up and walking to the window and looking out and seeing the lights as they're leaving. So, because I know now if I feel that's a sign that they just brought me back. And I personally believe on a scientific level of explanation that the reason you feel the sleep paralysis or the tingling electricity type feeling is because they're breaking you down to a molecular level to beam you aboard. They're beaming you up, Scotty. I mean, essentially, Star Trek was trying to tell us something without telling us something. This really is how they transport. Okay, they really are like breaking you down to a molecular level, and then re redoing your physical form as you enter the craft. That's why you're in kind of like a holding area when you first get there because all your stuff is sort of scattered and busy and energetic for a while, when you first get there. And it's got to like all calm down and settle down. Just like when I wake up and I feel that way, after a few minutes, it calms down and settles down. It doesn't stick with you, you know. And same thing goes for people with sleep paralysis. Though personally, that's never been my case. Um, I have known people that that's what they experience instead. So number 15 is balls of light, flashes or beams of light, maybe a ball of light seen out of the corner of your eye or directly in front of you, um, maybe even coming from your bed. This is energy happening when you're getting ready to be beamed up, is what that is. Um, and of course, electricity gives off, photons, and the bigger the amount of energy that you're using, the bigger the photon burst will be, so to speak, right? As far as quantum fields go and the way that things are working in all of that, it's going to be like, instead of on the microscopic, you're going to see it more on a macroscopic, except it's not like giant, it's, balls of light. So that's another one that you'll notice. Also, having dreams of flying. If you have any kind of recall of a dream as a child or an adult of flying above the buildings, flying above um, your bed in your room, floating, being like Peter Pan and the kids, flying out the window. Again, telltale signs that we're right there telling us things without us realizing it. So that's that's your astral projection, but understand too that there are different forms of abduction. They can take your astral self or they can take your physical self, depending on what they're taking you for. Typically, they don't take your physical self unless they're doing the medical checkups and stuff. They can just take your astral self because your soul self, your soul level, your higher self is what is learning and experiencing through all of this. So, um, there's really nothing to gain by taking the physical body because the physical body isn't as important in the lessons that they're going to teach you when you're a child and so on. Also having a very strong memory of something unusual, like a skinny baby or hypodermic needles or lying on examination tables, floating through the air. All of these things. And my briefcase just fell over for no reason. Um, all of these strong impressions of memory are your brain trying to tell you that there's something there to look at, something more there to look at on your subconscious level. And so when you're ready, just maybe entertain that a little bit and explore it and see what's really there. Number 18 is cosmic awareness, socially conscious, ecologically conscious, environmentally conscious, and more times than not, even becoming vegetarian or vegan. I personally am not, but I was feeling a a sense of a pull toward that direction for the whole PETA things and all that, cruelty of animals and all that. But then I just understood a different way for me to live, still being able to eat meat, but in a conscious, a good conscience type manner. So I buy, local meats and um, grow my own foods, things like that. But each to their own, right? Each to their own. But this is this cosmic awareness, this collective connection that we have to our social environment, our physical environment, our land, our water, our air, the ecology of everything, how well everything works and ebbs and flows together, becomes very important to you if you're an abductee. So, also, number 19, having a very strong sense of duty or a mission in life, right? So, someone who's very focused on their mission. Number 20, um, feeling a sense of being chosen for a purpose, feeling special, but not in like an ego type way, just really feeling like you have an important role in all of this. 21 is experiencing unexplained events, anything out of the ordinary. Literally from seeing a UFO in the sky, missing time, thinking you saw a clown. Clowns are actually another prominent thing that we will see in childhood through forms of abduction. They would give us images of clowns until they realized that a lot of us were really freaking scared of clowns. And so they quit doing that. But clowns were a big one. Seeing a clown pop out of nowhere, um, walking out from behind a building and there's no circus in town, whatever. But yeah, which seems very creepy. Okay, so being psychic in the meaning of knowledge of an event that's going to take place before it does. Um, this is a more often than not thing that's in common with abductees, is that they have this ability to know before everyone else knows about something happening. Dreams of large eyes, any kind of large eyes, and they don't even have to have a face and a head attached to them. It can just be a pair of eyes coming at you in the dark in your dreams when you close your eyes. You just got the eyes, the eyes, the eyes are looking at me, right? So that's a telltale sign. Being startled awake, a sense of panic, or having anxiety out of nowhere for no reason are a very strong connotation toward abductees, um, that you've been abducted. Uh, the need to look at or to draw pictures of aliens is another one. Because again, we've become like obsessive compulsive about, what we've seen, what we've experienced, and we've got to get it out of us somehow. So we'll start drawing it, or we'll start watching all these shows and videos and stuff, to figure out if we've seen them before. Who else knows about the ones we've seen, kind of a feeling, right? Um, fears and phobias, inexplicable aversions to heights, to snakes, to spiders, certain sounds, large insects, bright lights, your own personal safety, or even of being alone. Anyone who has a heightened sense of fear or phobia for any of those things I just listed, 99.9% sure you've been abducted. Okay? Memory of a special place or a safe place as a child, a special place. that you could go hide. Um, Children that have been abducted, all of us have that in common. We find a safe place. We find a safe space, somewhere we think we can go to where we can't be taken. Okay? So if you have memories of having a safe space, chances are you've been abducted. So 29 on the list, or excuse me, 28 on the list is low self worth feelings. Okay, so low self esteem, um, lack of love for self, and mainly this stems from knowing that you've experienced something, even if you don't know what that something is, and the fear that telling someone would either make you be called a liar or crazy, or trying to cause trouble or whatever it is, right? We have this fear of sharing it, or we're brave enough to share it, and then that happens. And so we create these low self esteem issues within us. You know, our self talk, our self love is not good anymore at this point. We're just like, hush, suppress it, don't talk about it. People are going to think you're crazy, they're going to think you're lying, yada yada. So low self esteem, low self worth. Also, 29, seen in your sleep, either someone with you becomes paralyzed or motionless, frozen in time, or you experience it yourself and you're aware of it as it happens, right? We're not talking about you wake up with sleep paralysis. We're talking about you're awake in your bed and you experience being frozen. You experience the sleep paralysis happen as you're awake, or you experience the person that's sleeping next to you being paralyzed, frozen, while you're being taken and they can't move. And they can be literally wide awake, but be frozen and not be able to do anything about keeping you from being abducted. So, most certainly, this is something that is experienced between abductees and people around them. Someone in your life claiming they've been abducted or seen a UFO or has missing time. They could also claim that they've seen an alien before, not just the craft. And this could be your mother, your grandfather, your uncle, your aunt, your cousin, your brother, your sister, anybody in your family. If they've seen one or had some kind of experience like that, missing time or whatever, chances are you have too, because they follow bloodlines. We know this for a fact now. They follow people's bloodlines. Specific people's bloodlines are abducted, not just one person from a whole freaking family. If you've been abducted, or if somebody else in your family's been abducted, more of your people in your family have been abducted as well. And if you're listening to this video or you're looking into this information, chances are you have been too. Okay, moving right along. 31 is blood. Finding blood, any amount of it, from a small speck to a gusher. It could be on your pillow or your covers, on your clothes, whatever. But other than finding the blood, there's really no explanation for where the blood came from. Now, a lot of times with my children, and even a few times with myself, it was nosebleed. And my boys would always have more severe nosebleeds than the girls would. And for a long time, I thought this was like a physiology thing, you know, boy versus girl stuff. Well, I was half right, I think. It was a boy girl thing, but it was more of a that fight or flight thing, right? Boys are more likely to fight, right? They're going to fight back. They're going to struggle. The girls are more complacent. Their fear makes them withdraw. They go into their shell, right? Their shell of their physical body. They're in their shell, protecting themselves, while boys are projecting outward and trying to fight. So boys by nature are more aggressive, typically, than girls are. And I think that's why my boys would always have the more severe nosebleeds. And I mean, literally, they would wake up and their bed would look like a damn crime scene. I mean, there would be so much blood all over their pillow, all over their bed sheets, all over their cover, their clothes, Their face, I mean, it looked horrendous. And, my first son is my second born. Um, so he was the one that I really experienced this with first and foremost, on a big scale, right? Because my older daughter didn't really experience too many nosebleeds. But he had really severe nosebleeds. And I took him to doctors and everybody, and like nobody could figure out what was causing these nosebleeds. And then he started showing other signs of possibly being abducted. So I started monitoring things more closely. And then my second son came along, and he was experiencing the same type of things with the really bad nosebleeds and stuff. And there were two girls in between him and the other son. And again, the nosebleeds weren't as severe with them and stuff. So I knew that it had something to do correlations with the abductions that I could not do anything about, even if I wanted to, other than stay up all night thinking I'm protecting people. But I always thought, it's a physiology thing between the boys and the girls. And at this point in my life, being 50 now, I've come to this conclusion that it was because the boys are fighters. That's simple. They were doing the nasal probe on the boys, and the boys are fighters. They're more aggressive, you know? And believe me, trust me, you can fight even when you think you're paralyzed. You can fight because your thought is the most powerful weapon you have. It moves things. I promise. It makes things happen. Okay, so moving right along, 32 is a deep interest in UFOs or aliens. So if you have this deep interest, unexplainable interest in UFOs and aliens, then that is a telltale sign that you are probably an abductee. Um, a great aversion to anything alien or UFO related is also a very telltale sign, probably more likely than the interest in them. People that have this great fear of um, mainly specific looking aliens, whether it be praying mantis or reptilian or the grays with the big bulbous heads and the big eyes, whatever it is, if you have this innate fear of those images, of those thoughts, of seeing something like that, then chances are you were probably taken. And for some of you that are old enough, you'll remember when we were kids, there was a show called Land of the Lost, and the Slee Stack were on there, right? The really G-rated, poorly created costumes of the lizard people, Slee Stack, right? But every time the Slee Stack would come out of their UFO cave, uh, I was terrified. I would hide behind the couch. I would run out of the room and hide in the closet. I was absolutely terrified of the Slee Stack. And now I understand why. But as a little kid, I didn't. And so, uh, if I hadn't had looked into this subject further, I may have never understood that particular fear that I had in my life about the Slee Stack, which were the stupidest looking. I mean, even then, when I was that young, it was a very poor costume. You could tell it was people walking around in these costumes, but there was this level of me that knew that that shit's real, and they're not cool. They're not the cool guys. I don't like them at all. I don't like them. Okay, I still don't, but I don't have fear now because I understand. And knowledge is power. I want you to keep that in mind. Knowledge is power, and that's why I'm doing this video. Okay? So moving on. 34, the feeling of being watched, particularly at night. And I think that's a repeat, actually, from another one of these that I've already read. So we're just going to skip on past it. 35, solid objects. Having the feeling you could or have passed through a solid object before, like a door or a window or a wall, where you feel like you've passed through these things without, proper physics that we understand to get through them. And so, yes, If you have um, the feeling that you've done this, then chances are you're likely an abductee. But on the quantum physics level of understanding, this is very plausible because everything is energy. All matter is energy. And if you vibrate that energy fast enough, it becomes fluid. You see, my wooden desk is in a slow moving state of energy. That's why it's more solid than my glass of tea, right? Because it's vibrating at a different energy level. Everything has its own natural vibration. The tea is made from the water. The water has high vibration. Crystals have a high vibration. Our body has a lower vibration that matches the earth. So we have a solid yet liquid balance going on within us. Uh, so walls very well can be walked through, or doors, or windows, or the roof of your house, or anything else. Okay. And kind of, again, they were trying to tell us all along with Santa Claus magically coming down a chimney and back up, right? He's coming from the sky, flying around, magically comes through your house without ever unlocking a door and walking through it. So they were trying to tell you all along that you can do this. You can do this. Not just aliens. You can do this. The aliens are doing it to you because you don't know how to take you to their ship and to return you. But you could do this too. Okay, moving right along. Uh, Seeing a fog or a haze when you know damn well it shouldn't be there. So a lot of times that type of cloak will happen when there's a craft in the area. You'll see a fog or you'll see a haze or even a cloud that will be in the shape of a triangle craft or a saucer shaped craft or whatever. But it looks like it's supposed to be a cloud, you know. Ironically, I've been alive 50 years and I've never ever heard of these funny little circular, not little, these circular clouds that they're talking about now when people videotape them and they're like, oh yeah, that's this kind of cloud. And my son could tell you what that word is, but I don't know it off the top of my head. Lenticular, circular, lenticular, or some such like that, whatever it is. Um, if you know it, you can put it in the comments. But, all these UFO looking clouds that are in the sky lately in the past few years that we've never ever saw or heard of before, right? But you have to think like our militaries, our governments around the world have this technology now. They have their own UFOs, their own cloaking technologies. So if they're hanging out up there using their invisibility shield stuff, making their own little cloud around them, that's probably why we're seeing more of them in the skies. Or there's more craft visiting us from other places of late. Take it how you want. Okay, so nosebleeds, and we've already covered this, at any age, any time of day or night, unexplainable nosebleeds, and you're not a Coke user. I'll put that blank statement out there for all the whatever people that want to try to use that as an excuse or something. Um, I'm not talking about people who use drugs and put them up their nose. I'm not talking about that at all. I'm talking about people who are completely healthy, drug free in that aspect, and have random nosebleeds day or night. Soreness, awakening soreness in your genital areas, particularly, or your whole body that just simply cannot be explained. Chances are you've been abducted. Back and neck problems. If you awaken with pain or stiffness or have pain and stiffness that is not explainable at any time of the day or night, morning, noon, or night, likely you have been abducted and returned, with the results of sore muscles and stiffness. And no, of course, that does not explain all back problems or neck problems. Excuse me. Or even the pain and the stiffness. I mean, it certainly has to be of an unexplainable nature. And then, of course, by all means, go to the doctor and be examined to make sure there isn't something else wrong with you. Okay. Um, Electronic malfunctions. This is a fun one for me. Not really, I'm being sarcastic. Certain electrical appliances, computers, digital watches, um, cell phones, TVs, DVD players, VCRs, if you had one of them, radios, all this stuff, street lights, could totally fail when you're coming near them. TV and radio signals could change, or suddenly you have this static uh, thing going on. Now, no, that does not mean that you're being abducted because that's happening. Like, not in that moment, is what I mean. But if those things are happening, then likely you are being abducted. But here's my side note on that. From my own research and my own scientific methods being applied to things to see just what's what, it is my personal and official professional opinion that yes, you are being taken, but this is not the reason that you are doing these things, affecting these things the way that you are. We innately are able to do that. We are energy. We are walking, living, breathing, biological, electromagnetic energy. We have our own field. Some people's field is bigger than others. And we project without even realizing it. We're sending, we're receiving all the time, whether we realize it or not. And I can literally be sitting here with my hand on my mouse or my hand on my cell phone and feel energetically irritated about something, and it will mess my shit up every time. Every time. Which was a good lesson for me because it taught me to condition myself to be well trained and well versed in minding my thoughts. So it was a necessary lesson for me and proved to be a very powerful tool. Also for others, my brother can literally manipulate the mouse on the screen and make it move where he wants it to now that he understands his own energy better. Um, there's some pretty cool things we can do, you know. Some of them may be sort of useless or just for fun, but we're supposed to have fun, right? So why not? Okay, also ringing in the ears. Frequent or sporadic ringing in one or both of your ears. A lot of people will just sign this off to being tinnitus. But I'm telling you, if you have a severe problem with tinnitus type symptoms, and no, I'm not a doctor, and no, I'm not putting doctors down, but let's face it, they cannot explain what would cause tinnitus in anyone. They cannot explain it. There is nothing going on within the workings of the inner ear or the brain they can deduce and say, this is why it does that. They cannot find an answer. And people have been suffering from tinnitus and vertigo for a very, very long time. And I believe they go hand in hand. And I believe they also go with abduction. Um, Pain or sinus trouble, or even like a sudden headache behind one particular eye or the other, or even like a sharp pain in the ear that sporadically and periodically will happen. And of course, you don't have like ear infections or eye infections or, you know, uh, an aneurysm happening in your brain or whatever. You know, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not trying to discount all pain that you would feel behind your eye or in your ear as simply being an abductee's symptoms. Okay, let's not, please don't be ridiculous about anything. Um, medical procedures, dreams of medical procedures being done to you, or vivid memories of medical procedures being done to you, though no one else in your family can account for why this would have happened. I'm just going to give a brief example here because I know we're running kind of long and I want to get through the rest of these. But I had very vivid memories of being inside of a CT scanner multiple times in my young childhood. And in my early 20s, I mentioned that to my mother. I was like, Mom, why did I have so many CT scans done when I was a kid and stuff? And she was like, Kelly, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. Because to my knowledge, you've never had a CT scan for anything. You never had a reason to. You never had a severe head injury. You were never in a bad car wreck that would have warranted it, blah, blah, blah. There's no reason that you should have ever been in a CT scanner. And she didn't even know um, why I would know what they look like from the inside. You know, she's like, I mean, surely you've had to have been in it because you just described exactly what it looks like inside of there, inside and outside. And I have very vivid memories of being inside of some type of thing that looked like a CT scanner. Now, flash forward to 50 and the things that I know and the technologies that we have on planet Earth that are very real and exist right now. We have these things called med beds. I believe that I was often put through a med bed, and was scanned and healed because I did have very often, um, I was inflicted with ailments, severe ailments at times. I had Rye syndrome when I was 13 and had a near death experience, and then was miraculously healed and back home, right after the near death experience. So, there were multiple times that I would fall and knock the wind out of me and stuff, and it would damage what I felt like damaged my rib cage and stuff. Excuse me, I have a terrible tickle today. But of course, my mother wouldn't think that I was that seriously hurt, and so we wouldn't go to the doctor or the hospital or whatever because we were just raised to be tough like that. Uh, but I can remember being in those scanners on multiple occasions, and my family has no recollection of why I would have been there. My brother doesn't remember it. My father didn't remember it, etc. Um, par- Paranormal experiences, or the feeling that you're going crazy because of what you're thinking and think you experience and stuff. So odd psychic or intuitive um, experiences of paranormal events, or like my briefcase just falling over. Some people would be very scared of stuff like that. Me, it's just another day at the office, right? Totally used to that kind of thing now. I'm used to the knocks that I hear. I'm used to the lights flickering. I'm used to all kinds of things, right? But when you're experiencing that and you don't understand it, it can be very scary to you. It can be very fearful. So, and you also feel like you're going crazy, particularly if no one wants to believe you. If you're the only one up at night and you're the only one experiencing these things, and then you tell your significant other or your parents or your siblings or your friends or whatever, and nobody wants to believe you and you have no support system, then you begin to question your own sanity. It's that simple. Anyone with an addictive or compulsive behavior goodness, could likely have the compulsive or addictive behaviors due to being abducted, either throughout your life or sudden onset in adulthood. Either way, because excuse me, some people suppress it really well as a child, and then as they become more alert and aware and awake as an adult, and their perspectives are shifting about things, that's when it will really like set in for you that something creepy's happening to you, right? It's creepy if you don't know. So addictions are a good way to like drown it out and block it out, pretend like it doesn't happen. People with compulsive disorders where everything has to be perfectly in a row because you need some kind of order and control in your life because you know that's something you can't control, or at least you think you can't. So you pick out all these other things that you can control and you obsess about it. Okay. Um, Urge to take vitamins. The urgent need to replenish the body and to be more healthy. Um, like you need to fix something, you just don't know what it is, right? Um, if you have a fear of closets, making sure that the closet doors are always shut. If you were a child and you felt scared that something was coming out of your closet at night and getting you, chances are you were being abducted as a child because the closets were used not just were, are used as a gateway or a doorway or a stargate, if you will. um, Sexual problems or relationship issues, the inability to actually enjoy sex or to keep relationships for very long, maybe because it would interfere with something if you were in a relationship, or maybe even that um, you just feel like you can't trust anybody completely because no one has ever wanted to listen to you and believe what you know that you've went through, right? Particularly if you've been questioning your own sanity over it. It's much harder to trust someone or to just have a great sex life and just let go and enjoy yourself because that trust thing is a big deal. You know, that trust issue is a big stickler for all kinds of things. Um, which leads us actually to the next one, which is difficulty in trusting people, but particularly doctors. um, People who have been abducted typically do not trust doctors any further because the doctors are usually the first ones that we turn to for explanations and comfort when we know that something strange has went on with us. But the doctors are actually the first ones to uh, try to tell you that you're wrong, you're crazy, and here's some medication. Just take that instead. Don't talk about it. They've taken on the role of the Men in Black really well, in my opinion. So the next one would be feeling vigilant. The fear that if you aren't always vigilant, that you'll be taken. And again, this goes back to like, feeling like you're the night guard security, right? Being very vigilant. Having dreams of destruction, end of world scenarios, or major catastrophe scenarios. Typically, people that have been abducted are going to experience that. Simply put, because um, there are impending dooms coming to our planet well, for a lot of reasons, if we don't take better care of the planet, and no, I'm not talking about global warming because that's a farce, in my opinion. But we do still need to take good care of our oceans and our air and our soils and what we're putting into our bodies and what we're putting into the animals' bodies, so on and so forth. I mean, we need to be good stewards, definitely. We're not being moral with any of that for sure. Um, but no, it's not because of global warming and it's not greenhouse gases, in my opinion. It's things beyond that are much more sinister and a whole different topic. So moving on. We're almost done here. Um, Feeling of keeping quiet, not wanting to talk when you're around other people. You just really want to clam up and be an introvert and not interact and not share and not open up and be your true self because being your true self would give you labels that, society would throw on you. And you just do not have that, so you just keep it zipped. Um, Sleeping against a wall is another one that's a good sign. People that want to keep their bed against a wall and keep their back against the wall when they sleep, it makes them feel safer, almost like you're in the corner guarding, right? It's back to that vigilance. Locking doors, double, triple checking your doors, your windows, everything before you go to bed. Again, back to vigilance, and that fear that something or someone can get you after you go to sleep. Having parents, children, siblings, etc., that either you've spoke with them or you have heard them speak to others or yourself of things that are on this list, right? So, say in childhood you overheard your parents talking about UFOs or aliens or whatever, or your siblings have talked about it with you, or maybe you have friends that have talked to you about it. Um, we kind of the reason this this sort of twofold, really. A, on the one hand, if we're stumbling into a conversation where it's happening, it was meant to be for a reason, right? But B, on the other hand of that, when people are coming to you to speak to you about it, it's because something in your energy signature that they have read on their subconscious level has told them that you're safe to speak with on this subject. And we know that about each other, right? We already have that radar. We have a lie radar, we have a safety radar, we have stranger danger radar. Like, we have radars. We read energy all the time, every day. We are reading energy. Okay? Just become more consciously aware of it. So also people that have had no success with trying to resolve some of the things on this list, but to no avail. So if you've tried to explain your missing time or your memories of being um, inside of medical equipment or having medical procedures done on you, but there is no logical explanation for why these things are taking place, um, chances are likely, highly likely, that you are an abductee or an experiencer. And so that was the last one on the list. Also, I want to add to this family history of UFOs, flashbacks, out of body experiences, near death experiences, um, a strong need and desire to study astronomy or physics, dreams of flying into beams of light, having procedures done, seeing doctors around you, or military, fears or awareness of certain places or things, numbers on the clock lining up, 1111, 333, 222. These synchronicities are telling you to pay attention and to open your eyes and listen. Um, if you've seen hooded figures or strangers dressed in black, um, likely you have had an abduction experience. Now I'm going to go ahead and close out this video because this has run a little long. It's an hour and a half now. And I'll make a second video that'll be part 2 where we go over the questionnaire, and then you can maybe understand more fully and clearly if you are an experiencer. So thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you for part 2. Blessings.